you go, Jeff. How are you today, buddy?
I'm good. How are you? Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, my trading warrior brother. So,
can you see my screen?
do you see the share button? Not yet. There's a drop-down menu with a green box.
Oh, I see it. Okay.
You got it.
And you can see my screen?
Got it. You have all the squiggly lines up here, Jeff. So
great. Let's start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let's start with some. Let's do a little recap with some 2019 stocks. 2019 was an interesting year, where a lot of forex pairs and a lot of stocks pulled back to their yearly pivots. Let's start with the Russell. Russell last year came down to its yearly pivot last September, bounced right off of it, and then went up to its yearly R1 pivot back in December, and then broke out to a higher high. So the yearly pivot went from the YP to yearly R1.
Wow.
Bitcoin,
do you see that a lot? That would, or does that make it an interesting year that you'll get both the?
That's actually a textbook year. Price usually trades between the yearly pivot and yearly R1, or the yearly pivot and yearly S1. So that's a normal year. Bitcoin go ahead.
Yeah, let me ask you about your pivots, Jeff. Is it anything proprietary on how you do it, or is it your trained eye from having done it so long? Can other people learn to look for the same kind of pivots as you?
Absolutely, and I'm going to share that with you when I'm done here. I put together my pivots are not proprietary. They're standard pivots that are available on most charting platforms.
Okay.
I use a combination of weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly pivots. The yearly pivots I've learned is where the big reversals happen during the year, and the weekly pivots we use for short-term trades, 1 to 4 day trades. That's where the biggest reversals happen during the week. So it just all depends on the time frame that you're trading. We try to match the pivots to your time frame. So
is it better when they're both lining up the same way?
Absolutely. When we see,
so you look for even confluence on pivots.
Absolutely. When we see quarterly, monthly, weeklies all together or close together, we have a confluence there. Yeah, we know there's going to be more computer algorithms that are going to be hitting there. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
So last year, Bitcoin went actually in 2018, the low on Bitcoin found support on the yearly S1 pivot, and then in 2019 rallied up to the yearly R1 pivot and then pulled back. And I'll show you where the new pivots are for this year coming up. Some marijuana stocks last year. CGC, Canopy Growth, went up to the yearly R1 pivot at $52 and then pulled back to its yearly S1 pivot at $15. That was a hell of a move. So the yearly pivot told you last year, if you wanted to get involved in the pot stocks and it was at 48 bucks, you only got a $2 or $3 upside, potential before a possible big reversal. Cisco last year had bad earnings, pulled back to its yearly pivot, and then it rallied up to this year's yearly pivot. It went from the 2019 yearly P to the 2020 yearly P, and then it fell again. So these yearly pivots show us where the biggest reversals are going to happen. US dollar last year went up to the yearly R1 pivot and then reversed. This year, it's already broken its yearly R1 pivot, and I've got some charts for you on there too. Euro dollar last year found support right on the yearly S1 pivot, bounced off of it, and then came back up to its 50% Fibonacci retracement for the year. This is the yearly 50% fib, that red dotted line. But the yearly S1 pivot caught the low. Here's cable. Also came down to the yearly S1 pivot at $1.20 and then rallied. It took several months, but it finally made it back to the yearly pivot. One of the things that I find is price comes back to that yearly pivot 80% of all years after it tests a yearly S1 or an R1 pivot. The yearly P is what I like to call fair value. And the yearly P is basically just the previous year's high plus low plus close divided by 3. It's just a real simple math calculation.
And that's a real nice hit rate, Jeff. So, I mean, if you were patient enough,
and
you probably don't get, on average, how many of those signals do you get a year?
Not very often. And price doesn't come down to a yearly pivot very often. So when it does come down to a yearly pivot or come up to a yearly pivot, it's a rare event. And they work 75, 76% of the time.
Okay, so it's not going to even happen every year, is it?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But the yearly pivot usually does happen. The yearly pivot gets hit 80% of all years.
Okay.
Silver
I was
last year.
wondering if I was just going to have the patience of Job to, wait a couple years for a trade. I think
We
that
no, the yearly
I'd be
pivots.
jonesy.
Yeah, the yearly pivots usually get hit. Usually it's the R1 or the S1, depending. We also like to call the yearly P, that YP. That's the bull bear line for the year.
Okay.
When prices below that YP, we have a bearish bias for the year. When prices above the YP, we have a bullish bias for the year.
Okay.
Silver last year went up. SLV last year went up to the yearly R2 pivot, also silver futures, and then it pulled back down to the yearly R1 pivot. One of the things I've noticed also is price likes to move between these yearly pivots. It likes to go from pivot to pivot.
All
The
right.
big,
When it takes out those lines, Jeff, and tactically, both of these took out the purple line by, marginally. Do you wait for it to turn back above the bottom line if it takes it out to get
actually,
confirmation that's going to work?
well, you can. There's lots of ways you can do it. I'm an aggressive trader, so I usually place my bets right on the line.
Okay.
But the reason why it went below a little bit and why it went above a little bit is because there was a weekly pivot there that it went to.
Okay.
Okay.
So when you just go with it at those lines, then do you have what I would call a money stop where you're willing
Yeah.
to risk just a certain percentage of your account on that idea?
Yeah, usually when I'm trading these yearly pivots, I'm usually willing to risk 50 cents or $1 to make $3 or $5 or $10 is usually the way that I look at it. But a lot of times I'll look at the weekly pivots when price comes down here to a yearly R1 pivot and I'm looking for a bounce here. I'll usually look at the weekly pivot and I'll use a stop below the weekly pivot.
Okay, so you had confluence there. It's not shown on the chart, but you had confluence there.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Okay, I just lost my chart. So that's SLV. Where else are we here? Is that my last chart? No.
That's the end of the history lesson.
No, it's not.
Okay.
We got TNX. Here's
okay.
10-year yields last year came down to the yearly S3 pivot and then bounced back up to the yearly S2 pivot.
Yeah.
So it works on lots of instruments. Tesla last year. The low last year was right on the yearly S2 pivot at 178. And we know it went up this year to the yearly R4 pivot at 960. So I'm a dip buyer. I don't short stocks. I like buying good quality companies when they go on sale. This is one of the companies that I recommended and we bought last year.
Did you ride it, just out of curiosity, did you have any left when it was trading 900?
Yes, half my position. I sold half of it.
Oh my God! You either when people stay there, I have a very hard time. I make the tough money, Jeff. The move where it's just starting to get going, and I had to gut out a turn and all of that. But to be there for a parabolic move, unless you use like a trailing stop, I've always said either have to be naive because it doesn't happen that often, or greedy. So tell us how, there's one thing to make a great call, better to make a great trade, but the best is a great hold. Tell us how you were able to hold it in a parabolic move like that.
In my IRA, okay, I like buying good quality stocks in my IRA and holding them long term. And one of the things that I do is I buy the dips when prices come down on the S2 pivot. When it doubled, when it got back to 367, I sold half of it.
Okay,
I got my investment back. I let the other 50 shares ride. I only had 100 shares.
Okay, so there is some money management there.
Right.
So,
absolutely.
Okay.
I didn't feel Tesla was going to go broke. I didn't believe in the Tesla Q that was going around on FinTwit. I'm a big Elon Musk fan. I don't know if his books are cooked or not. I really don't care. I just trade the pivots, and the pivots told me this was a good place to try a trade, risk $1 or $2, and man, made a lot more than that.
Do you want to go to Mars on one of his spaceships? Are you that much of a fan?
No, I'm not that much of a fan. I have no desire to go to Mars.
We can see how the pivots work up there, man. All right, go.
I live on a barrier reef island off the coast of Florida, and I'm very happy here.
That sounds pretty nice. Okay.
Chinese yuan last year. Everyone talks about how China manipulates their currency. Well, I guess they must be using the pivots to manipulate.
They subscribe to you, man. Huh?
They must.
The PBOC, you know, you check your customer list. Go ahead.
Because the low last year was right on the yearly pivot and the high was right at the yearly R1 pivot.
Nice.
Same
Yeah.
thing also on the offshore. Here's a dollar yen. Last December, it came up to its yearly pivot at 109.60, and then it pulled back in January to the 2020 yearly pivot and bounced off of it. And we all know where it's at today.
Yeah.
Here's another longer term trade of it. It went from the yearly P, yearly S1, back up to the yearly P. So the big reversals during the year, I find, happen at these yearly pivots. So now let's look at some 2020 yearly pivots. What do we got coming up for this year? Apple. This year, we're looking for the yearly R1 pivot, and I'm just using stockcharts.com. I'm not using any special software. If you go on stockcharts.com, if you add pivot points to your chart, change your chart to a weekly time frame, the pivots become yearlies. So it's just real simple. Apple this year, looking for 350 and 346. Sometime it'll go up to 350, and sometime it'll pull back to 346.
246.
246. Thanks.
Yep,
sorry.
got it.
Bitcoin this year, we're looking for price to come back up to either 12,000 or 13,000. I've got two pivot point calcs on here. I got the Fibonacci yearly pivots, and I've got the floor traders yearly pivots. So sometime this year on Bitcoin, we're looking for it to come back up to either 12,180 or 13,000, as long as it holds above the yearly pivot at 81.82. Again, the yearly pivot is the bull bear line. When price is above that yearly pivot, prices
That's an important number for HODL people or Bitcoin traders. Because it looks like if it got through that, Jeff, you were looking at 4,000 or so.
Correct. Exactly. The comp so far this year, remember we just had a big pullback this week. The high so far this year is right at its yearly R1 pivot, floor traders yearly R1 pivot on the NASDAQ comp. We're looking for it to come down sometime this year to 82.85.
Another 1,000 points.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to do it on this round or if it's going to wait later on in the year, but sometime. Copper this year, looking for it to trade between 251 and 303. The yearly R1, yearly S1. That's what we're looking for on copper.
Okay, well, but with all of those different S1s and R1s, how do you choose which ones, like you just said, what you're looking for? How do you choose those?
I'm looking for a confluence. See, there's a confluence on the S1s. They're pretty close, 251, 256. So when I see that confluence, I know that these S1s are going to be strong support. And when I see this confluence, I know it's going to be strong resistance.
Okay.
And I also respect price that is closest to the nearest pivot point.
All right.
Is what I tell people.
Okay. Let's look.
Corn. Looking for corn's got a bearish bias this year. It's below the yearly P at 399. It's probably going to come down to 351 or 330.
Be a good buy down there.
Here's
Euro pound.
Euro pound, currently testing its yearly S1 pivot right here at 83 cents. May go back up to the yearly P at 87 cents.
Okay.
Euro dollar.
Yeah.
Just bounced off of its Fibonacci yearly S2 pivot here at $0.78. May come back to $1.12. As long as it's below $1.12, it's going to have a bearish bias. It may go down to $1.05 later on this year too.
Okay.
That's the S3 pivot.
Okay.
And cable, bouncing off of its yearly pivot right now. It as long as $1.28 holds, should go to $1.34, maybe $1.38 this year.
Yeah, because $1.3738 is confluence, so that's a
correct
possibility.
Correct,
okay.
But we have to respect this one first.
Right. It's a process.
Correct, it is. It's usually a stair step. Gold, looking for 17. The first pivot was at 1640, and now we're looking at 1708 and 1760 is possible this year. But sometime this year too, it should pull back to 1488, 1461. I just don't know when, but sometime this year it probably will pull back. When price gets overbought, it usually pulls back to the P. When price gets oversold, it usually comes back to the P's.
And that's the yearly P there at 1460.
Correct. These are the yearly P's.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking for on gold.
Great look.
And nat gas. We're looking for nat gas sometime this year to come down to 153. That's the yearly S1 pivot. Nat gas is a bearish bias. It's below the yearly pivot for the year. Silver, looking for silver to go up to 1948 or 2031. I recommended it a few weeks ago when it pulled back to the yearly P here at 1739. That's where I bought some silver futures. And looking for 1948 is the first target, and then 2031 is the second target on silver.
And your bull bear line is at 1740?
1740 is the bull bear line, correct.
Okay, good to know.
Same thing on SLV. Recommended it a few weeks ago when it pulled down here to $16. Looking to take some profits at $18 and then at $18.89. So what I'll probably do is scale a third here, scale another third there, and let us alert, and then I'll let a third ride. That's the way I like to trade. I never sell all at once on my winners. I like to scale out of them. The only time I sell all once is on a stop loss.
Okay, like that.
And SPX this year, looking for 3487, 3500 is the yearly R1 pivot, and 3000 is the bull bear line. That's the yearly pivot. So in my opinion, the SPX is probably going to trade between 3500 and 3000.
I guess the question is, which comes first?
That's always the question. I thought 3500 was going to come first because we came close to it a few weeks ago when we got up to 3400. So yeah, that's always the question.
Okay, so 3005 is a yearly pivot, bull bear line.
Correct.
Thank you, Jeff.
You're very welcome.
Okay.
And let's look at the dollar. It's currently testing its Fibonacci yearly R2 pivot at 99.73.
Okay.
It may go higher, it may go up to 101 and a half this year, but right now this 99.73 is going to be resistance.
Bull bear line on the dollar
is at 96.83.
Okay. Thank you.
And the dollar yen went up last week to its yearly R1 pivot. So far this year, it's been trading between the yearly P and the yearly R1 pivot. A weekly close, this is a weekly chart, so a weekly close above 112 will be the clue it's going to 116.
Nice.
But right now it's probably going to trade between 112 and, I don't know if it's going to come back to 108, but probably 110 or 112 right now.
Okay.
So that's how I like to use the yearly pivots.
All right. A lot of great numbers you supplied for people. Okay, go ahead.
Here's oil. The yearly pivot is at $59. So as long as oil stays, WTIC oil stays below $59, we have a bearish bias this year. It may come down to $48. That's the yearly S2 pivot. So 59 to 48 is what we're looking for on oil. The Dow Jones last week came up to its quarterly R1 pivot, doing something a little bit different here. And we're looking for price to come down. We're looking for this correction to end when it gets down to around 27,661, 27,500.
Okay, that's not much lower.
That's not, we're about, yeah, we're not too far away from that.
Okay. And you're calling that just short-term support?
Yeah, this is just because I'm using a quarterly pivot, so it's just going to be short-term support. We've got a 200-day moving average down here at 27,223. It looks like that might be a longer-term support.
Okay.
IBB bounced off of its yearly pivot. We're looking for strong resistance this year at the yearly R1 pivot. If it Fibonacci yearly R1 pivot, it's got the F in there. So it's a Fibonacci calculation. If it breaks above, a close above 124, will open the door for 131. That's the floor traders yearly R1 pivot. So 113 was strong support. It should go to 124 or 131 this year.
Right, define floor traders pivot.
Well, floor traders is the same thing as traditional pivot calculation.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. Fibonacci's are based on Fibonacci retracement numbers. Floor traders floor traders traditional pivots are the same.
There aren't any anymore though.
Yeah,
they left their pivots behind, so that's their legacy.
They left their pivots behind, and that's what the algorithm, that's what the programmers picked up, and that's what they're using right now. Okay. Algorithmic. SMH, we're looking for a pullback to the quarterly pivot here. Quarterly R1 was the high at 152. We're looking for a pullback. We're looking for this correction to end, this pullback to end here on the quarterly pivot here. And here's the 10-year TNX. We're looking for a yield to come down to $1.30 to $1.22.
Okay.
On the 10-year. Last year, the yearly S3 and yearly S2 pivots defined that range. And XLF looking for price to come down. Again, the quarterly R1 pivot was resistance. So it's when that happens, price always comes back to the quarterly P at $29.42. That's where we're looking for.
You have anything at 28.50
on XLF?
Yeah.
I do. I got at 28.50 is the yearly pivot.
Okay, that's my target.
Okay,
right.
yeah, that's
okay.
28.50 is the yearly pivot. So
that's
that would
a bull bear line down there, and
that's
everything.
That's the bull bear line. That's a great spot to try a trade. Risk 50 cents or $1. You know, that's yeah, we like that.
See, we're collaborating now.
Yes,
not just a regular old interview. So
that's
Jeff,
yes.
How do people follow this kind of work? And do you have something on your website to teach people how to do it, or do you hold webinars? Or
I do a little. I do it all. I have a website that I post. I have a chart blog. I have a video also that I just produced on the yearly pivots, and I marked it down for you guys. It's normally $89. I got it marked down today for $44, half price if you guys are interested. And in the webinar, I'll teach you guys how to use the yearly pivots, how to where to find them, which trading platforms have them. You know, lots of trading platforms have them, how I use them, how they're calculated, and I'll teach you a lot about the yearly pivots. So we've got that. I've also got a private Twitter account where I post, let's see if we can get into here.
You post your good stuff on your private Twitter, and the junk on your regular.
Well, yeah, I use you know, my private Twitter account for my clients.
I'm kidding you.
No, it's true. For instance, ExxonMobil, you know, I tweeted this morning, we're looking for price on ExxonMobil. We're looking for a bounce here on the yearly S2 pivot, possibly back up to the $63. So we're looking for support on 56. So in my private Twitter account, I post, you know, private setups here for my clients. And also every night I do the futures. Here's the YM today. It's doing a little triple bottom on the weekly S4 pivot. Looking for it to possibly come back to a 28,500 today. So I do a lot with futures, Bitcoin, oil, Nikkei. So this is what I post for my private clients and where to buy and where to sell, basically.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, Jeff, you are a great example of what I say, that when people ask or people try and sell the secret to trading, that there isn't one. It's hard work.
Oh, yes.
So, you know, I can only imagine all the time you put into your analysis and working with people every day. Money doesn't just fall out of the sky and drop into your account. You have to do the work.
Correct. And looking through the charts and looking for the setups. And yes, it's a lot of work.
That's work.
Yes, it is.
Okay, you don't have a jackhammer in your hand, but a lot of mental energy to do this. You can't be lazy, and I could tell with what Jeff's doing, he's a very hardworking technician. So, thanks.
And we use weekly pivots real quick. Here's the ES mini contract. Yesterday, it came down to the weekly S4 pivot. Right now, it's doing a little, looks like a triple bottom on the weekly S4 pivot. I think if 32.15 can hold today, it could go back up to 32.85. So far, the 50% Fibonacci retracement is the overnight high. So
okay, 32.85. I'm a seller up there.
So I use weekly pivots for short-term trades. I use the yearly pivots for longer-term trades.
Jeff, you're a pro. I knew it the first time we talked. I want to thank you for coming here and edifying our community. You could also follow Jeff on Twitter at pivotal_pivots, and his website again is www.pivotalpivots.com.
Thank you for having me, Dale.
Thank you, my trading warrior brother. I hope that pips rain down on you in 2020.
Thank you. Same to you.
Okay, buddy. That's Jeff York, everyone. Have a great day. Hope everyone enjoyed what we did here today. We laid it out on the floor. Remember, don't just count your pips, count your blessings, and we'll see everyone tomorrow. Thanks again, Jeff.
Thank you.